Welcome, everybody, to First Hope Bank's podcast, Real Conversations About Money. I am joined today by my guest, Joseph Proscia, Director of Trust and Estate Services here at First Hope Bank. Welcome, Joe, to the podcast.
Well, I'm honored to be here, so thank you for having me.
We're very excited to have you. Why don't you give us a little bit of your short bio and kind of what you a little bit more about what you do here at First Hope Bank. The brief version. We'll dive into the questions in a
Yeah,
second.
I could be verbose, so I'll try to keep it quick. After spending about 30 years of working at Wall Street firms and getting to know financial advisors, estate planning attorneys, as well as First Hope, actually being a former client of mine, I had the opportunity to partner with a great organization, a great family-owned organization, about 18 months ago, to expand upon our trust and estate services for clients that are working with outside financial advisors, estate planning attorneys, CPAs. And really, it was just a culmination of 30 years of work and watching where the world was heading, the natural aging process. And in my opinion, this is the next big job to be done within the wealth management community. And I just thought with, the background that I had in my previous roles, the people that I knew, and then more importantly, the organization that I would be joining, which is obviously First Hope Bank, that the timing was perfect for us to really kind of fully embark on this next big job to be done for our clients across the board, which was having in-depth conversations and helping them guide, through the next phase of their lives, which is estate and legacy planning. So, I'm honored to be part of this organization. And it took 30 years to get here, but here I am.
Well, we're glad to have you. So let's dive into this conversation. So trust and estate planning. This is this the, even to me this is a scary topic. So how how do we simplify this for people? What does it really entail? What does estate planning include? And why is it so important for people?
Well, unfortunately, none of us are going to get out alive. And, Ben Franklin once said the only two certainties in life are death and taxes. And with proper estate planning, you could tackle or begin to tackle some of those certainties of life. Most of us spend our lives trying to provide and do the best that we possibly can for our families and for ourselves. And we try to take ownership on our decisions. We try to make great decisions. But a lot of folks don't like to deal with, what the last phase of life looks like. And honestly, if you think about it, it might be the most beautiful thing and most altruistic thing you could possibly do is with some proper planning, make sure that your family, your charities, or whatever is important to you are taken care of even beyond the years that you're no longer here. When it comes to estate planning, a lot of times people feel as though it's only for the wealthy, and it's not. It truly isn't. I mean, the unique complexity of it and the nuances and the tools that are available in the industry with the great planners and the great attorneys, and obviously what we do could certainly address a lot of the ultra high net worth market. But the reality is people like you and I, Andrew, like there's basics things that we should all have. And estate planning kind of culminates on a lot of them, from setting up a basic will, right? Having a power of attorney, having healthcare proxies, making sure just even the proper beneficiary designations for 401ks and life insurance. All of these are part of this overarching theme of what estate and legacy planning really is. And the reality is, without proper planning, the state takes over and makes decisions on your behalf, which this is not meant to be political, but I don't think anyone wants a government entity taking your life's work and saying who gets it and who doesn't. Right. So the idea of just doing some planning up front, really, your money, your home, whatever is important to you can go to what you want it to, who you want it to, who's important to you, or charities or whatever it is that you want to do. But the reality is, there's a great quote that, a lot of times the misnomer is estate taxes are only a tax on the wealth, is a tax on wealth. The reality is it's a tax on procrastination, right? So with proper planning and done up front, it's amazing what you can do and how you can truly create a legacy for yourself. And more importantly, take care of the people that are the most important to you. But it's only done with proper planning. So it's important to start early, and how complex or what it is that you need will really depend on the situation. But just even with some basic planning, it really does go a long way. And that peace of mind is really important.
Absolutely. So that leads me to this question. So what are some of the misconceptions about estate planning? Like to me, I've got a will. Is that enough? Like, I think a lot of people say that. Maybe it's like I've got a will. That should be enough. But tell me kind of what are some of the mistakes or misconceptions people have about estate planning?
And I think starting with your question about a will, first of all, everyone needs a will. So whether or not the robust services that we provide apply to everyone, I think is still, to be determined in terms of what the situation is. Everyone at a very basic level needs a will. That's the first thing. Now, a will doesn't control all the assets, but it kind of lays out what your plans are. Everyone should have a power of attorney that, God forbid, something happens to us. Someone that you trust could step in and make decisions on your behalf, and you don't have to be deceased. I don't want to go down the morbid rabbit hole here, but it's something that we should think of. Healthcare, living, a living will. These are all basics that could be done relatively inexpensive by just simply engaging an estate planning attorney. The costs are not expensive. So from the standpoint of kind of misconceptions, it's like, well, only the wealthy need to do this. No, everyone needs to have the basics. Um, or I already did it, 5, 10 years ago. Well, life changes, right? I mean, divorce happens. Sometimes there's new children born. Sometimes there's grandchildren's born. Sometimes there's family conflict. So you should review these. It's not a set it and forget it. You could just simply review it every 3 to 5 years, or as life changes, right? The birth of a new child, the birth of a grandchild. Maybe the directionality of your life changes a little bit. Maybe you find something that you're really passionate about that you wanted to make sure that would be included, a charity or or any other type of beneficiary that you want to include that, kind of expresses who you are in your life. I used to joke with my dad, he should name every park bench in Verona, New Jersey after himself because he loves walking, right? So the idea of like you can do whatever you want with proper planning, but you should start early. You should revisit it. And it's not something just for the wealthy. If you own a home, if you have a 401k, if you have any assets, it's something that you should consider. And I think everyone should have the basics. Whether or not they need to get into the more complex solutions, that will determine in terms of the different thresholds of wealth and the complexity of their overall situation.
Interesting. So there was a couple key things in there that I kind of want to pull out from what you just said. So starting early, I think is one thing that you mentioned is very important because
Hmm.
I don't think you probably don't want to wait until you don't want to wait until the time when you said, oh, I really should have thought about that. Uh, so that's probably one. Start early, and then you said review regularly. So you said every 3 to 5 years, or when there's big life changes.
Sure. Sure. So, I mean, we set the context in terms of when early is, right? Comfortably in my 50s now. I'm not afraid to say that. I didn't have any of these documents in place prior to getting married. I currently have 3 children now. We own a home. We've accumulated a little bit of assets along the way from hard work. So yeah, for us, it made sense kind of at that point, right? So it was a life change, right? It was getting married and then the birth of my first child, second, third, you start to revisit, you start to add beneficiaries, you start to make sure those things are in place. There's milestones in life that happen, right? So, that doesn't have to be age based. It could just be a milestone of life, the birth of a grandchild or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of different things that can happen that would cause someone to review. There's also an unfortunate side of it. Sometimes divorce happens. Sometimes there's family drama that happens. All those issues would be a reason to basically maybe revisit these plans, right? I mean, look, life happens. No one's judging. It's a document that kind of expresses your ultimate wishes. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons why someone should be pursuing this on an ongoing basis. It doesn't have to be obviously annually, but every 3 years or so, kind of look back at the document and says, does this still reflect the intentions are? Or if there's a life event that happens, positive or negative, right? Does that cause us to make some changes to this plan? Or, like I said earlier, maybe a new passion that said, hey, I'd really like to, leave what I have to this organization that expresses how I personally feel. I love the work that they do. So the list goes on in terms of why you should review it. But again, it should be it's a snapshot of your life and what you want your legacy to look like beyond us physically being here. So that's part of the reason why we should always review it and then take a look at those milestones as kind of mile markers for us to say, hey, maybe we should revisit this. By the way, once you originally set something up, to make what's called a change or a codicil is not expensive. So if you did the heavy lifting and then you want to make subtle changes around the periphery, it's not a Herculean task to get done.
So it's not something that you're checking out on a weekly basis, but uh,
No, that would be overkill. Yeah, yeah.
exactly, exactly. No, that's great. So that covers a lot of kind of why you want to do this. So let's talk about, so those that may be listening to this that don't fully understand what a trust is. Can you dive into a little bit of how trusts work and why someone might choose or need to establish one?
Sure. So we talked about the basics of a will, power of attorney, healthcare directives, and then just making sure beneficiary designations are aligned again, so that the appropriate people that you want to get the money that you've accumulated in your lifetime moves through the process easily. So trusts are generally established for a couple of reasons. It's to have more control over the asset side of it. So a will dictates kind of what your wishes are and lays out a game plan, but a trust has more to do with the assets that are held. The beautiful part about a trust is that you can create a trust in your will that upon your passing, you say, here's what I'd like to have happen to the assets that I own a home, a 401k, an investment account, art collection, wine collection, motorcycles. It doesn't matter, whatever it is, real estate, horses, it could be anything. And what that allows you to do is to avoid probate, right? So again, you don't have to go through the state process. It just streamlines it and it goes directly to the beneficiaries that you like. In certain cases, let's say there's some money and you would like to control it a little bit more when you have minor beneficiaries. So, you probably don't want an 18 or a 21-year-old all of a sudden just getting a windfall of money because someone passes. Maybe you'd like to have a little bit more control about that, how that works. There's estate planning benefits to doing a trust, from estate taxes and long-term strategic philanthropic reasons. There's reasons to do it if you have not only minors, but maybe a special needs child in terms of how you're going to take care of those. So the trust, in essence, is a living, breathing instrument that kind of takes on a life of itself. And by the guides of the trust documents that are written with the client, as well as the help of a good estate planning attorney, it actually comes to life and make your wishes come to fruition by basically managing the wealth and how that wealth is distributed for it could be almost in perpetuity. So there's a lot of benefits to doing it from the standpoint of creating privacy, moving through probate. If a client owns property, just to use a basic example, if you have a home here in New Jersey where we are, but you happen to have a condo in Florida, well, that would basically entail you going through probate through New Jersey as well as Florida. And Florida, it's actually a lot more difficult. You need to get a Florida attorney. Whereas if that property was just simply owned inside of a basic trust, it would be able to pass a lot more conveniently to the heirs. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, and you can get to the real complexities of the ultra high net worth and the benefit of why that works and how they do it. But yeah, that you could do generational planning, or you could just do basic planning where you say, hey, I want to skip probate. I want it to streamline. I want it to go as quickly as possible, or I'd like to make sure that I'm taking care of the people appropriately. And I'd like to have a little bit more control about how that works.
That's great. That's you've really, especially for me, you've helped kind of demystify and explain this a little bit better for me, which I hope our listeners are getting the same thing out of this. So that's great. I really appreciate that. Um, I'll have to set up an appointment with you, and I've got some questions. So
Sure, sure.
so we'll talk later. But anyway, so so First Hope Bank. So you've been here now. You say 18 months. So tell me this: how does working with someone like First Hope Bank and you and your team, how does how does that help someone, I guess, feel more confident and supported throughout this process? Why choose us, Joe?
Sure, sure. So if I can give you a little bit of backstory, not about myself, but kind of the world today. So what we've seen is that estate litigation, which is people contesting wills and when someone passes, basically it's not uncommon for unfortunately families to fight. And unfortunately they fight over money. And historically, what you've seen is that when there's more money involved, the higher the probability of certain things being contested. So in the state of New York, estate litigation is up about 350% since 2016. Why is that? Well, the markets have done very well. Real estate values have gone up. So there's more money. We've seen people live longer, which is a positive. There's situations of like what's perceived as undue influence of like maybe one child is closer to mom or dad than the next one, which causes some heartache. So it's not uncommon for when people are doing their planning, they love their beneficiaries and they want to take care of the beneficiaries. And what their thought is that the ultimate sign of trust is that I'm going to delegate that authority to a son or daughter, a sister or a brother. And what they find is that historically, it's first of all, it's a thankless job. You immediately become a fiduciary, and what often happens is it creates tremendous resentment. So when people ask me about that, let me be clear: we're not for every family. But the question needs to be asked is: have you fully considered the impact by naming an individual, the impact that will have on them and your family? So when mom or dad are doing their planning, just to keep it as cozy as possible, the thought of simply maybe naming a third party who does this full time, who does this exceptionally well, and this is where First Hope comes in. Our job is to follow the recipe. That's it. So mom and dad create the plan. They say, here's what we want to happen. Here's how we want the beneficiaries to be paid. Here's how we want to take care of the grandkids. Here's how we want the money to be dispersed. And in essence, we follow that recipe. That's our role. So we become an independent corporate trustee acting on their behalf. Now, why us? Well, the bank has been around for 115 years. I think we plan on being around for another 115 years. I don't know too many people who are going to live that long. So oftentimes naming a brother or a sister who are of common age makes no sense, or naming an attorney or a CPA who's of common age doesn't make any sense in order to play this out for potentially a generation. So having an independent co-trustee or a corporate trustee like ourselves allows all of your wishes to come to fruition. We follow the recipe, if you will. We follow the blueprint of what it is that you laid out. We avoid the family drama, right? Of, a son or daughter taking that role and someone being mad at them or questioning them, or just putting them in a situation where they have to say no to a brother or sister, which is a terrible situation, right? So you've seen a lot of that. And unfortunately, when money's involved, you see family drama. So the idea of removing that and letting us do our job, and our primary focus is exactly that on the trust and estate administration side of it. That's all we do. That's all we do. We make sure that the kids are taken care of, that the beneficiaries are taken care of, that distributions are made, that taxes are filed, that everything is in a line. And we're adhering to the documents as they were originally drafted, which comes full circle to why you want to review them so that they currently express what it is that you want. And you remove the drama. It's not a fun job. It's a thankless job. It's perceived as the highest honor. It's me saying, Andrew, I trust you so much that when I pass, I want you to take care of things. The reality is it's thankless. You become a fiduciary and you're personally liable in certain cases for making a mistake, whether they're intentional or not. And it often causes a lot of drama. So the thought is, why not just let us do what we do exceptionally well with our long history? And more importantly, is the fact that we execute this, unbiasedly. It's here's what the document says, here's how we're doing this. And the thing that makes us special and unique is that we are a community bank. We're stewards of our community. And that's the same role that we take on every trust that we're named in. Right? I mean, in full disclosure, it's the only thing that differentiates us from the larger entities. We like to joke is that we still have that community bank feel at its core. When someone calls, someone answers, we always respond. And our client service model, which is experienced throughout First Hope's infrastructure, is exactly what they get on the trust and estate side. And it's really important. It's really important.
Yeah, that's great. I like you said, I think it's comforting having kind of an objective third party manage all that process.
Mhm.
I've I've seen it. I've seen it multiple times in my lifetime of trust setup, and it's a family member running the trust, and that causes all sorts of angst between family members, etc. Um, it's an emotional time of life, but then going forward, it's um, yeah, it can cause a lot of issues. It is. I agree. I think it's very comforting having that. So someone to you've got
I'm
the
willing
playbook
to,
set out by the
I'm sorry, Andrew. I didn't mean, and that was never anyone's intention. That's the whole point of it, right? I mean, it's the gifting of assets and beneficiaries. It's there to enrich their lives, to not cause family drama and conflict. And it's like, again, naming a corporate trustee like ourselves, we could be named a co-trustee, so you could still have some family input, but we're going to assume the fiduciary liability and do the blocking and tackling that's necessary. But when these plans were set up, no one's intentions were ever to cause family strife, right? It was the idea or the intention to help. And that's kind of where we come in, not to make it corny, but I mean, that's really the beautiful part about our role. And when you're dealing with minor children or special needs situations and you can make an impact and really help, it's that's the most fulfilling part of our job, bar none.
excellent. Well, so let me kind of wrap up this part of the conversation. So someone was listening to this podcast. They're saying, okay, this sounds like something I should at least look into. What's the first step? What piece of advice or what would you tell someone um, thinking that they should be looking into this?
Sure. Well, they can certainly reach out to anyone on our team. We don't charge for consultations. We don't charge for conversations. We also don't draft legal documents, which our team is exceptional. They probably read more documents than most attorneys, but sometimes it's nice just to have an initial conversation, right? And no fee conversation as a service to our clients and our customers to have a conversation about here's what your long-term plans are. Okay, here's some guidance. And then what we often do is make recommendations to well-suited estate planning attorneys, whether it's geographically or dependent on the type of complexity of they're looking for, right? So there's a varying degree of attorney expertise, and they themselves will tell you that. So if it's the basics of a will and a power of attorney, we have great relationships with local attorneys that we would be more than happy to make an introduction for. If you have a more complex situation where maybe there's businesses that are owned in family structures or family dynamics or just pure wealth situations or real estate, whatever the case may be, we have attorneys that are designed to help you there too. The point is that it starts with that initial conversation of kind of giving them a roadmap, answering some generally basic questions to create a little bit of clarity. That way, when they go in and engage the attorney, they kind of know the questions to ask. They have an expectation of probably what it is that they're going to set out. And then, if we're called to serve in that capacity, we'll clearly articulate what our role comes in. But what all we do up front is try to help, right? There's no fees, there's no charges to have a conversation. And then in essence, just to connect them to the right people is really our goal. And then from there, those conversations are private. I mean, husband and wife or spouse, they have a conversation with the attorney. They say, here's what we want to roll out. Here's what we want to do. Here's what we want our plan to express. And they go about it. And then we may be called to serve upon the back end once that's created.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today talking about this, uh, seemingly, daunting conversation. You know, it's not something you wanna have to think about, but it's definitely something you should think about.
Hmm.
Um, right. So before we go, Joe, um, unbeknownst to you, but I have what I like to call the lightning round of questions now.
Okay.
So let's start with favorite sports team.
Favorite sport? New York Giants.
Okay. Well, we're both in this. I'm a Jets fan, so we're both in the same boat on that one.
Yeah, we're
Uh,
long suffering, both of us. So yeah, we're I don't root against the Jets.
except
It's
we're
not
different. We're
like it's
different.
not Mets or Yankees situation.
That's right.
I'm
That's
a
right.
Giants fan, but I actually root for the Jets.
There you. I'm the same way. As long as we're not playing each other, then we're good. Um, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
My dad used to always say, "Just keep punching," and what he meant by that is just keep working hard and keep showing up.
Yep,
And I
that's
think I
great.
kind of I try to I don't know if that's the best, but it's the one that kind of jumped out of my head. Just sometimes in life,
I like that.
you just got to keep punching, right? You just got to keep moving forward and putting your head down and work hard and try to do the best you possibly can. I don't know if that's the best advice I ever gotten, but it's what came to mind.
I think it's good advice. So speaking of keep punching, so are you the early bird or the night owl?
Um, as I've aged, I've become more of an early bird. So I was I was up today at 4 a.m. If you
There you
asked me
go.
that question when I was in my 20s, I was a night owl.
Right. Yeah. Those things change every now and then.
Yeah, yeah,
Wonderful. Joe, again, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate the conversation. Um, and what people go to our website if people have questions. That's the first place to start.
absolutely. We're always here to
All
help,
right.
Andrew.
Wonderful. Well,
I
thank you so
appreciate your
much,
time.
Joe.
Thank you, sir. Have a great
Thank you.